Hello chess friends, and welcome to your out of chess channel, and welcome to a very special game that I prepared for you today. So this is really specialty today, because today we're seeing Leela C0 versus Stockfish 15 in the Yugoslav attack of the Dragon Sicilian. And today we're asking ourselves the question, can Stockfish 15 really survive the Yugoslav attack? Because the Yugoslav attack is such a brilliant, sharp attacking method against the Dragon Sicilian. It's one of the most tactical openings that you can see. Even the drawish games that are played in the Yugoslav attack are so beautiful, with so many beautiful tactical shots, with beautiful tactical sequences. And yesterday I spent like 2-3 hours and I just analyzed some games in the Dragon Sicilian played by top engines, and I analyzed many games played by white with the played by Stockfish 15, and Stockfish really brutalized every engine with the Yugoslav attack. Leela C0, the Dragon engine, the Scorpion engine. So Stockfish really brutalized all of them, and that's why it's really a special game today, because now let's see if really Stockfish can survive the most brilliant Yugoslav attack. So let's see the game. Leela C0 opened with the move e4. We have c5 by Stockfish, knight to f3, d6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight to f6, and after knight to c3 we have the Dragon Sicilian on the board with the move g6. And okay, after a couple more moves, bishop to e3, bishop to g7 is of course the main line. We have now the Yugoslav attack preparation with the move f3. The idea is clear. White wants to play queen to d2, bishop to c4, bishop to b3, queenside castling, and then launch a flank attack, g4, h4, h5. And as I said yesterday, I analyzed so many games played by Stockfish that Stockfish played with the white pieces. They were so brilliant. In the continuation of our commented chess games played by computer series, we'll cover for sure some games played by the Stockfish 15 engine. But let's see now how Stockfish handled really this monstrous attack. So here, kingside castling, we have queen to d2, again a preparation to build this battery, then to trade off the bishops here on g7, h4, g4, as we said, h5, opening the h file, and then maybe sneak in with the queen and deliver checkmate here on the h file with a combination played by the rook and the queen. So as I said, it's a common idea. Not many games are of course won with a checkmate, but at least white knows where to attack. So it's, I think, a decent setup. So in the continuation we have normal development here by Stockfish 15, knight to c6, bishop to c4, bishop to d7, queenside castling, and this becomes now really the common opposite side attack game, where the kings are really on opposite sides. So white is going to coordinate the attack towards here the king side. Black on the other hand will launch a flank attack, maybe with a6, b5, and who is faster on the attack and who better defends the position will probably win the game. So here in the continuation, knight to e5 was played by Stockfish 15. We have bishop to b3, rook to c8. This is also a normal idea. Many times in the Yugoslav attack you see also a beautiful rook sacrifice around the square c3. Many times if the queen gets deflected after bishop to h6, bishop takes a queen to h6, then many times as I said, black can maybe pull off this beautiful tactical shot, then can also sneak in with the queen, sever doubtful problems then white will have in the continuation of the game. So that's why many times the move rook to c8 is a preparation as a tactical goal, but it's also preparation to play the move knight to c4, get rid of at least one of these powerful bishops, because we have to know this, the bishop is very dangerous here. Also this bishop is dangerous because it creates of course this battery combined with the queen. So here in the continuation, king to b1 was played, and I was really now curious what is going to be the next continuation by Stockfish 15, because there are many moves that can be played. You can play maybe sort of a prophylactic idea, rook to e8, not allowing maybe bishop to h6, then you still can step back. But actually what Stockfish did here is the main move that has been played, I think, most of the times, the move knight to c4. Stockfish gets rid simply of the slice with bishop. We have bishop to c4, a rook to c4, and now comes here after move rook to c4, g4 immediately by white, which is of course obviously the beautiful attack. Now h4, h5 is going to happen for sure. So that's why black needs to be fast. A little bit too slow would be if you prepare this attack with the move a6, then b5 is a little bit too slow, because with the move h4, h5 white is already there. So that's why Stockfish played a much more aggressive method, played now the move b5 immediately, invites now basically white to take out maybe even this pawn on b5. Let's see what happens. For instance, if you play knight from c d to b5, bishop to b5, knight to b5, and now queen to b8. It's of course protectable. You can play of course here queen to a5, but I'm just saying I like now black's position because mission accomplished. I think at least in this position black is attacking immediately. White is now on the defensive side. That's I think the goal that you want to get, even if you have to sacrifice some pawns, even if you have to sacrifice some material. But I think it's not such a huge problem to give up some pawns. But now, as I said, at least black has some kind of a plan, because if you play too passively, then I think you get destroyed for sure. So that's why after move g4, as we said, b5, and here Leela didn't want to open files in front of its own queen, so that's why Leela continued with the pressure with the move g5. So we have here knight to e8, and now b3, kicking away the rook. We have a rook to c5, and now knight to e2, finally attacking the rook. The rook has to step back now on the starting square. Again, you can maybe take out the pawn here on a7, but again you're opening simply too much the files, the diagonals in front of the king. So now with your queen to a5, you have to maybe step back, and maybe you have tactical problems. So that's why again Leela c0 didn't dare to take any of these pawns. It's trying to lock the file, so when the black pawns are on the board, then of course no open files can happen. The only open file is now the c file that black can attack. So Leela continues with the normal plan. We have now h4, we have e6, very important move to not allow maybe a very important jump of the knight on e6, and also the knight on e8 so far is controlling the weakness on d6. So bishop to d4, we have bishop takes d4, queen to d4, and now bishop to c6. So at least Stockfish is not allowing maybe some f4 ideas, because many times this bishop will be dangerous against the rook on a1. So we have h5, knight to g7, attacking now the pawn, and now h6. So you see, Leela is there already. Leela creates really some madness. The problem is now you have to play knight to e8. Let's go back. If you play, for instance, the move queen to d6 instead of this move h6, then of course black will eventually take knight to h5, and now you have to play queen to c5 in order to protect the pawn on g5. Okay, still I think even in this position white is on the attacking side, but I think with queen to e8, maybe with the move f5, rook to f6, we can continue here also a little the pressure. So I think black can defend this position for sure. So as I said, there is also the c file tension, so white needs to at least get out of this mess. So this is maybe defendable for black. I'm not sure, but Leela didn't play simply the continuation with queen to d6. So here, as we said, in the continuation h6, we have knight to e8. Again, the knight is a very important defensive piece, controls the d6 square, but also controls the potential checkmate on g7. Really important defensive piece. So we have now f4. That's sort of a move that I think makes this bishop much more powerful. In the continuation, we have now queen to f5. Finally, Stockfish gets some kind of an attack, because we have to really say it. Leela played here really aggressively. Leela played really a wild attack already. Now Stockfish played basically the only defensive moves in this type of position. So we have now b4, kicking even way further the queen to c7, a3, fixing the pawn structure, and now f5. And this is now the goal. As we said, if you take, you'll simply lose the rook. So that's why you have to play en passant. G takes f6, and now we have a beautiful counter attack here by Stockfish 15. It's now a beautiful e5 move. So we have queen to d3, we have a5. So Stockfish still leaves, of course, this pawn like this, because it doesn't have to be taken immediately. Stockfish uses his time in order to create a counter attack, because as we said, you have to also attack your opponent's side of the board. If you don't do that, if you just play two passive moves, two defensive moves, you could get smashed. So that's why from move a5, we have now f5. So you see, Leela is trying further to open a position. Look, if the g file opens here, something really wild could happen. And I was really amazed how Leela also played this game, because when I watched the game, I was like at home, how is black going to defend this position? How to make some kind of a progress here, because obviously white is really on the attacking side. But okay, after move f5, here Stockfish played the 8x b4, and now rook to f6. At least this rook is now protecting also the 6th rank, which is very important. For instance, if you play knight to d5, now this wasn't played in the game, this is not good, because after bishop to d5, queen to d5, we can step back and look at this. Now you can maybe take, but now we can also take out the pawn on c2, so this is also a huge problem, the weakness here on the 2nd rank. So it's also something that bothers now white in the continuation of the game. So that's why rook from h to f1. Now Leela c0 is trying to get some kind of an activity on the f file. We have queen to e7. This move is very important because it creates sort of an indirect attack against the pawn on b4. This will be very important for the continuation of the game. Not immediately, of course, the pawn on b4 is a weakness, but it can become, and it becomes now actually a problem, because then after queen to b4, the capture of the pawn would be, of course, with a beautiful check. So we have here now knight to g3, now g5. This move is also very important because it keeps somehow the files locked, but now Leela c0 has sort of a strategic element, which is now the so-called supported pass pawn. So if this game reaches a fully endgame without minor pieces, without, I don't know, the rooks, without the queens on the board, then white is much better. White has then, of course, completely winning endgame. So that's why black needs to be careful. Black cannot even simplify the game so much that the game goes into an endgame. So black has to now make some kind of a progress here on the queen side, especially around the square b4. So we have now queen to e3, king to h8, getting out of this mess. So Leela can, of course, take out the pawn when you want. If you play now, for instance, the move queen to g5, then you get this idea d5. As we said, you can maybe try knight to h5, but look at this, queen to b4 would come with a check, and then black has good attacking chances. So after move king to h8, here rook to h1 has been played by Leela c0, and now comes a brilliant move, and that was really a surprising move for me when I watched the game at home. Stockfish pull off the move d5 anyway, because the b4 is an obvious target. You have to make some kind of a reaction here. So we have now knight to d5, we have here bishop to d5, rook to d5, and now comes the cool part about this game, rook to a6. So Stockfish didn't take out the pawn immediately. Stockfish is saying I have time to take out the pawn on b4 whenever I want to, but now at least I have gained sort of a tempo. I included a new piece into the game. That's the beauty about this counterattack by Stockfish, because Stockfish didn't rush just to grab one pawn. So here after move, instead of this move rook to a6, if you take queen to b4, then queen to b3 can be played, and now the game is simplified. And as I said, look at this, we have the situation where the position is getting more and more pardon me, is getting more and more into potential endgame, and then with this pawn structure, white is much better. White should probably win the game. So that's why Stockfish didn't rush, played rook to a6, and now rook to d1 by Leela c0, rook to a4. So Stockfish wants to grab this pawn with the rook, not with the queen, where of course white can play the defensive idea, queen to b3. So we have rook to b5. Now the rook takes the pawn, but it gets a little bit decoyed, because here a brilliant idea by Stockfish 15. We have here knight to d6. For instance, if you play queen to b6, rook to b6, then you get here a beautiful stunning move, queen to a7, and there's not a good way anymore to defend this position. You get even checkmated here on a1. So look at this, the rook is standing in the way of the protection of the a7 square, so it's not possible to defend the position like this. So that's why here Leela c0 tried, after move knight to d6, tried the move f6 to create at least some kind of a dynamic position. But now with queen to c7, here is the threat. It's of course the weak c2 square, rook to c5, but now finally Stockfish takes out the pawn on b4. So this is, I think, also a good lesson maybe for all of us, because many of us, I think, would grab just the pawn and hope for the best without even calculating so much. But you see, sometimes you have to keep the tension, sort of. You have to sometimes improve the position just before you make some kind of a tactic. Now it was time to take out rook to b4. Now you have to play king to c1, and now it's time to take out the rook. Now of course Stockfish is up the exchange and has now a much better position. Still there are plenty still positional problems in black's position, especially the passer here on f6 is very important. So here in continuation, first of all, of course, Leela c0 takes out the knight on d6. We have king to g1. You have to get out of this mess because in some occasions you can even get checkmated. Here in the continuation, knight to f5. If you play rook to d8 immediately, then of course king to f7, you can play maybe one check, king to g6, maybe you can play this one, but now everything can be stopped with the potential rook to b8. Even if you try some ideas of rook to g7 here, it's nothing special. King to f6, maybe you can get a check, but now with this one, king to e6, maybe you can grab the pawn, but also Stockfish would of course capture this pawn, so it's a completely winning endgame here for black. So that's why after move king to g8, Leela c0 didn't play this check, didn't play anything, played simply knight to f5, included the knight into the game. We have a rook to c7, very important move. We have king to d2, king to f7, rook to a6, and now king to g6. Finally, Stockfish 15 secured the king. The king is perfectly fine here, although it's surrounded by the knight, although it's surrounded by the pawns, but at least it's not such a huge problem anymore to defend this position. So c4, we have now g4. Stockfish continues here to push the pawns, tries of course to promote the queen. Knight to d6, we have a rook to d7, f7, we have a rook to b8, we have c5, and now king to h6, king to e3. We have now this one, rook to f8, and now rook to a2. So Leela c0 realized there could be some problems with this passer, so that's why Leela retreated with the rook. So we have rook to c7 attacking the pawn, rook to a5, king to g6, king to f2, and now rook to d7. We have king to g3, and of course now king to g5, protecting now finally the pawn on g4. And we're trying now from black's perspective to play h4, h5, and these two connected pawns are of course rolling. So rook to a1, we have a rook takes f7. This is a good move. This is a simplifying move. It simplifies the game really enough for black to win the endgame, because after knight to f7, rook to f7, we have rook to c1, and now h5. Here, of course, Leela c0 pushed the pawn further c6, but Stockfish first creates a check. We have king to g2, and now creates this blockade with rook to c7. So rook to c4, we have now king to f4, we have king to f2, g3, king to g2, and again king to g4. We're trying, of course, again the move h3. So king to g1, h3 anyway, rook to c1, and now h2. King to g2, and now king to h4. This is sort of a Zugzwang move. Now Stockfish is waiting Leela c0 to make a move, so that's the beauty about the Zugzwang, because if you, for instance, try some ideas of king to h1, then you get king to h3, and whatever you do, even if you prevent this idea, look at this, we can always even deflect here the rook from the defense. Oh, sorry, this is not working, I messed it up. Rook to g3 is actually happening. Look, you can even get stalemate here, but as I said, here in this particular position, you can play of course rook to after rook to c3, you can play rook to a7, of course, also deliver some kind of a checkmate. So it's not working. At least this pawn can be moved. I tried I almost messed it up. As I said, you can maybe deflect the rook, but actually you're getting stalemated. So really stunning tactics. But okay, here after move king to h4, we have a rook to c2 by Leela c0. So Leela was Zugzwang, had to play some kind of a move, but now rook to a7, again this beautiful motif. Because if you try now, here king to f3 was played, if you try now to push the pawn further, then you get this one, rook to a1, and there's no good way. Even if you promote here a queen, this promotion comes of course with a beautiful checkmate. So this is not working. So after move rook to a7, king to f3 was played by Leela c0, and actually in this position Leela c0 resigns. So really beautiful game, I think, in the Dragon Sicilian. Incredible, because I always thought at least that the Dragon Sicilian is a little bit dead. because of this Yugoslav attack ideas. And as I said, you see in the continuation of our series how Stockfish plays the Yugoslav attack. It's a little bit different than Leela C0's game, believe me or not. Stockfish will brutalize its opponent, so it's still, I think, sort of a unknown territory, because I'm not sure. Here Stockfish won the game, but Leela C0 had really an astonishing attack. Stockfish defended here the position like a lion, counter-attacked then eventually and won the game. Still, I don't dare to play the dragon, the common dragon Sicilian. I like to play more this hyper accelerated and accelerated dragon Sicilian, where you don't play the move d6, but you see how Stockfish handles this position. And if you maybe are a Dragon Sicilian player, I think this is a perfect game for you. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed the game. Really interesting ideas of the Dragon Sicilian. Really wild stuff. If you want to see more beautiful attacking games like this, check out my commented chess games play by computer series with some more games played by Alpha Zero, Leela Zero, Stockfish, and many more. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.